Imagine being a professional photographer and having a bride demand to borrow your equipment so her uncle can shoot the wedding for free. Or trying to sell a laptop and the buyer shows up with expired coupons and a broken controller instead of cash. Welcome back to Midnight Threads. Today, we are diving into the absolute wildest choosing beggar stories on Reddit. We've got scammers, entitled moms, and people with zero shame. So this first story comes from a professional photographer who's been in the business for about 8 years. They specialize in weddings, and their packages start at around $3,000, which honestly is pretty standard for quality wedding photography. A bride-to-be reaches out through Instagram. Right away, she's asking about prices, and when the photographer sends over their packages, this woman loses it. She says $3,000 is robbery and that her friend's cousin did a wedding for free because it's exposure. The photographer politely explains their pricing includes editing, travel, 8 hours of coverage, and all the high-resolution images. The bride responds with, "I can get my uncle to do it for $200, but his camera isn't as good. Can you just let me borrow your equipment?" I'm not kidding. She actually asked to borrow professional camera gear worth thousands of dollars so her uncle could shoot the wedding instead. The photographer obviously says no, explaining that's not how any of this works. The bride then pivots and asks if the photographer would be willing to shoot the wedding for experience and portfolio material. Since it's going to be at a fancy venue, when the photographer checks out the venue, it's literally someone's backyard barn. The bride then starts getting aggressive, saying real professionals help people out and that she's going to leave a 1-star review on every platform. Here's the kicker. She never hired the photographer in the first place. She just started leaving fake reviews saying they ruined her wedding and were unprofessional. The photographer had to spend weeks getting these removed and providing proof they never even worked together. This one's from a college student selling their old laptop online. It's a decent MacBook Pro, maybe 3 years old, asking $800, which is super reasonable for the specs. A guy messages saying he's interested, but can only do $500 cash. The seller counters with $700, and they eventually agree on $650. They arrange to meet at a coffee shop, and the guy shows up with a huge duffel bag. Red flag number 1. He sits down, examines the laptop for maybe 30 seconds, then says, "Actually, I don't have the cash, but I brought stuff to trade." He starts pulling things out of this bag. We're talking used DVDs, a broken PlayStation controller, some random cables, a watch that clearly doesn't work, and get this, a bunch of expired grocery store coupons. The seller just stares at this pile of junk and says, "Dude, we agreed on $650 cash." The guy has the audacity to say, "Yeah, but this stuff is worth way more than that. I'm actually doing you a favor." When the seller starts packing up the laptop to leave, this guy grabs it and says, "Come on, man, I drove all the way here. You owe me gas money at least." The seller had to literally pull their laptop back and walk out while this guy followed them to their car, yelling about how rude young people are these days. The whole coffee shop was watching this unfold. Alright, this story is from someone who does balloon art and face painting at kids' parties on the weekends. It's a side gig, and they charge about $200 for 2 hours, which includes supplies, travel, and entertainment. A mom reaches out asking about availability for her daughter's 5th birthday party. Sounds normal, right? She asks for a quote, and when they send over the $200 rate, she responds, "Oh, I thought you did this for free since you love making kids happy." The entertainer explains it's their job and how they make extra income. The mom then offers $50 and all the cake you can eat. When that's declined, she asks if they can just come for 1 hour instead. The entertainer explains their minimum is 2 hours due to setup and travel time. The mom loses it. She starts sending messages about how her daughter has been through so much, how they're a single-parent household, how this birthday needs to be special, and how anyone with a heart would do this for free. The entertainer holds firm and stops responding. 2 days before the party, they get a message. "Fine, I'll pay your ridiculous price." The party's at 2 p.m. on Saturday. They show up, set up their supplies, and start doing balloon animals. After about 20 minutes, the mom comes over and says, "Okay, I think that's enough. You can leave now." The entertainer reminds her they've booked 2 hours. The mom says, "Yeah, but I only wanted to pay for what we used. I'll give you $25. An argument breaks out in front of all the kids and parents. Finally, another parent at the party pays the full amount just to end the drama. The original mom then demands the entertainer stay for the full 2 hours since it's been paid for. They packed up and left immediately. The mom later sent invoices for emotional damages and ruining my daughter's special day. This person was moving across the country and needed to sell their furniture quickly. They posted a really nice sectional couch on Facebook Marketplace, barely used. Originally cost $2,000, asking $300 just to get rid of it fast. A woman messages within minutes saying she'll take it. Great! They arrange for pickup the next day at noon. Noon comes and goes. 1 p.m., nothing. The seller messages asking if she's still coming. At 3 p.m., the woman shows up with a small sedan. The sectional is massive. Like, you'd need a truck or at least an SUV. The woman looks at it and goes, "Oh, I thought it would fit in my car. Can you deliver it?" The seller explains they're moving and don't have time for deliveries, which is why it's pickup only in the ad. The woman then asks, "Can you take it apart so it fits in my car?" It's a sectional, so technically it comes apart. But the seller explains they don't have tools and are literally leaving tomorrow. Here's where it gets wild. The woman calls her husband on speakerphone and they start arguing about whose fault this is. The husband is yelling about how she never measures anything. She's screaming back that he should have come with the truck. They turn to the seller and ask if they can just store the couch for them until they can come back with a bigger vehicle. Maybe a week or two. For free, obviously. When the seller says absolutely not, the woman offers $100 for the couch since I have to rent a truck now, which is your fault for not disclosing the size. The ad had dimensions listed. Photos from every angle. The seller points this out. The woman then sits on the couch and refuses to leave until they negotiate properly. The seller had to call the police for trespassing. As the cops show up, she finally leaves but takes one of the throw pillows with her, claiming compensation for my time. This designer does logos and branding for small businesses. Their basic logo package is $500, which includes multiple concepts, revisions, and final files. Someone reaches out saying they're starting a company and need a logo. The designer sends over their package information and contract. The potential client responds, "500 seems high. My nephew has Photoshop and could probably do this. Would you do it for 100?" The designer politely declines and explains their experience and what's included in the price. The client counters with, "Okay, how about this? You do the logo for free. And when my company takes off, I'll pay you double." It's basically an investment. When that's rejected, they send a Microsoft Paint drawing of what they want. It's literally stick figures and shapes. They say just make this, but professional. Should take you like 10 minutes. The designer stops responding at this point. A week later, they get an email with, "Fine, I'll pay the 500. Here's what I need." Attached is a 47-page document describing the logo in excruciating detail. We're talking font choices, color psychology explanations, mood board references, competitor analysis. This person clearly spent hours on this document. The designer starts the project. After sending the first concepts, the client requests revisions. Normal so far, but then they request 17 more rounds of revisions, each time completely changing the direction. After revision 20, the designer invokes the contract clause that they include up to 5 revision rounds, and additional rounds are $50 each. The client explodes. They say this is extortion, that a real professional would keep working until the client is happy, and that they're going to sue for breach of contract. The designer sends the signed contract highlighting the revision policy. The client responds, saying they never read contracts and that shouldn't count. It ends with the client demanding a full refund, keeping all the logo concepts to show other designers what I want, and threatening to report them to the Better Business Bureau for scamming. Someone posted about looking for a roommate to split rent on a 2-bedroom apartment. Rent is $1,200 total, so $600 each, pretty standard for the area. A guy responds very interested. They meet up, he seems normal, and they agree he'll move in on the 1st of the month. Moving day comes, and he shows up with a girlfriend. The poster says, "Oh, I didn't know you had a girlfriend visiting." He goes visiting. She lives here now. The poster is confused because this was never discussed. The guy says, "Yeah, but we're sharing a room, so the rent stays the same, right?" Wrong. The lease has a guest policy. Utilities would increase, and this wasn't the agreement. The poster tells him the girlfriend can't live there. The guy loses it. Says he can't afford $600 on his own, which is why he needs his girlfriend there to split his half, so he's expecting to pay $300 total. The poster explains that's not how this works. If there's a third person, they need to reapply with the landlord, and rent would likely increase. The guy and girlfriend start moving stuff in anyway, ignoring the conversation. The poster calls the landlord, who comes over and tells them they can't move in. The guy demands the poster pay for his moving truck rental, since this is their fault for not being flexible. He also wants compensation for the security deposit he already gave, even though that would be returned per the lease agreement. The girlfriend starts crying, saying they're now homeless because of the poster's selfishness. They had apparently already given notice at their previous place. The landlord has to escort them out. The guy later sends invoices for moving costs, storage unit fees, and emotional distress. Also threatened to sue for discrimination, though he couldn't articulate what he was being discriminated against for. This person is selling their old Honda Civic. It runs perfectly, has maintenance records, asking $4,000, which is below book value. A buyer comes to test drive it. He brings a mechanic friend who spends 5 minutes looking under the hood and declares the car needs $3,000 in repairs. The buyer, based on this 5-minute inspection, offers $500. "I'm doing you a favor, taking this piece of junk off your hands." The seller says no thanks and asks them to leave. The buyer refuses, sitting in the car, saying he wants to think about it, and makes phone calls for 40 minutes while sitting in the driver's seat. Finally, he gets out and offers $1,000 cash. Right now, final offer. The seller again declines. The guy takes photos of the car and posts them on Facebook saying, "Watch out for this scammer trying to sell a lemon for $4,000, tags the seller's profile and everything. The seller reports the post, but the damage is done. They start getting harassing messages from the buyer's friends saying they're a scammer. Plot twist, the seller takes the car to an actual mechanic for inspection, gets a clean bill of health in writing, and posts it as a response. Turns out, the buyer's mechanic friend wasn't a mechanic at all, just some guy. The original buyer then messages asking if the offer still stands at $1,000 because "I feel bad about the misunderstanding. A teenager started a dog walking service in their neighborhood over summer break. $10 per walk, 30 minutes. Very straightforward. A neighbor asks if they can walk her 3 dogs. The teen quotes $30 since it's 3 dogs. The neighbor counters with, "How about $10 total?" They all get walked at the same time anyway. The teen explains that 3 dogs is significantly more work, different paces, different needs, more responsibility. The neighbor agrees to $20. First walk happens, the dogs are completely untrained, one pulls constantly, one won't walk at all and has to be carried, and one tries to attack every other dog they see. It takes over an hour, and the teen is exhausted. They come back and politely explain they need to charge the full $30 given how difficult the dogs are. The neighbor refuses, says a deal is a deal. The teen says okay, but they can't continue walking the dogs at that rate. The neighbor posts in the community Facebook group that this teen extorted her and abandoned her dogs. Midso's completely fabricated story about how the teen lost one of the dogs and demanded extra money to go find it. Other neighbors who had used the teen's service defend them, but the damage persists. The original neighbor then demands the teen pay for a professional dog trainer since you stressed out my dogs and now they need therapy. And that's it for today's stories. I swear, the audacity of some people never ceases to amaze me. If you've got your own choosing beggar stories, drop them in the comments below. I might feature them in a future video. Don't forget to smash that like button if you enjoyed these stories. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.